Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Good morning, everybody. I am Jay Kumar, Assistant Professor in Environmental Science from Geetham University, Bengaluru campus. Today, we are going to discuss about the fourth module of this environmental studies. At the outset, I sincerely thank Swayam Prabha and Dr. B.S. Balaji for permitting me to deliver this lecture on biodiversity. In today's discussion, we are going to discuss what do you mean by biodiversity, how is it being defined, and why is the need to study them, how they are very important in our day-to-day life, and how the biodiversity exists in different levels, and what are the biogeographic zones of India and how are they being classified. What is the importance you find in those biogeographic zones? That is what we are going to discuss in today's class. Well, biodiversity. Bio means life, diversity means variety or variability. That is the meaning biodiversity. So, if you split the term and look on, bio means life, diversity means variety. If you just look onto the term, this term was coined by Walter G. Rosen in 1986. Earlier, biodiversity was referred as species richness or species diversity. All the species that are existing in this globe are a vital support for the survival of the human race. Human race is totally dependent on all the living forms, very particularly plants and animals surrounding him. The amount of oxygen that is being released by the plants during the process of photosynthesis is not only cleaning the surrounding air, but that is the base for humans to have a fresh rejuvenated oxygen in addition to the atmospheric oxygen. So that way the basic vital support, the breathing support is given by the plants. Well, if you just look on to the biodiversity in simpler terms, if you just look on, it refers to the variety. Variety means you find many are present. Even if they are presenting many forms or many varieties, there is a variability. So among all groups of living organisms, see, dough is a basic thing for creating idli or dosa. Even in the idli, you find a variability. It may be a fried idli or it may be a rava idli, like that. So ultimately, the biodiversity refers to the variety of items, and in that items, how the variability is found. The best example we can say that you find very many dog species. In the sense, dog species are there, subspecies are also there. In the dog, you find lot of variability. There may be a pug dog. There may be a German Shepherd. There may be a Pomeranian. So varieties, Labrador, all these things are present. So ultimately biodiversity first refers to the variety and variability among all groups of living organisms and the ecosystem complexes. Some animals are found in the forest. Some animals are found in the desert. So ultimately the ecosystem determines their variety and variability because many of the abiotic factors limit the distribution and colonization of these species. Now if you just look on to the definition of biodiversity, this definition was given in the year 1992 in the convention, rather a Congress of Biological Diversity, where it has been defined as the variability among living organisms from all sources. Variability in the sense one animal is different from the other. The other animal is, so you find individual differences. Even in humans, humans are said to be one species, Homo sapiens, but still you find lot of variability. So the father is somewhat resembling his father, or the son is resembling the father. Some variations are there. So there is a shuffling of genes that makes the variability. Color. For example, you find a Negro to be more black in color. On the other hand, you find white. He may be white in color. Indians are neither black or white, they are somewhat brownish in color. So it is all a distribution of even the color, it is all the shuffling of the genes. So you can find the variability among the living organisms from all sources, let it be the plants. Even if you find a rose, you find a rose color or a red color or a yellow color. So hybrid varieties are also there. So a variability among the living organisms from all sources, including the terrestrial, marine and other aquatic ecosystems. Terrestrial in the forest. In the forest itself you find different types of mango trees. Marine, fishes, variety of frogs. So other aquatic systems, even if you just go, when you come towards the shore, you may find a good sweet water for drinking. If you move towards the sea, the water is found to be salty. So the ecological complexes limit or play an influential role in the variability of the species present in that ecosystem. Now we will go to the importance of biodiversity. Why we have to study? All the life supporting services, particularly oxygen, carbon sequestration, I am just giving this as examples. All the life supporting services are provided only by biodiversity. For example, food. Food is a direct consumptive value of the biodiversity. You could able to easily cultivate the crops and harvest it and take it as a food, rice, or in the case of wheat, or you can directly take it in the form of a mango. So that is a direct resource consumption. So when it is processed in the form of a juice or other thing, it becomes a commodity. And very more essential is it is providing oxygen. So oxygen is released, and whatever the carbon dioxide that is being released by humans and other animals are beautifully taken by the plants and they sequester them. Sequestering means locking them. So in their trees and woods. So the forest cover plays a major role in reducing the global warming, thereby locking the carbon gases. Another thing, any disturbance leads to severe consequences. Deforestation. In fact, we have discussed enough about deforestation in earlier lectures. If you quickly recall, if you completely remove the vegetation cover, first thing it affects the rainfall and the distribution of the what to say that clean air and the water. So if failure of monsoon happens, it leads to lot of consequences. Soil erosion, enough troubles we are happening, and we are fearing that we are marching with desertification. We are moving ahead to desertification. That is a point to be noted. Another important thing is ecological services. Recall back, in an ecosystem, one of the important function through food chain and food web is the cycling of nutrients and energy cycle. We saw that it follows the laws of thermodynamics. The nitrogen phosphorus cycle moves between the aquatic and the terrestrial environment, and it is carried through the microorganisms like nitrobacter, whatever it might be, we have seen. So the importance of biodiversity is understood in the form of its life supporting services and ecological services, and if any hindrance or disturbance happens, it leads to the complete disturbance in the ecosystem. Another thing, now we will just look on to the levels of biodiversity. If you just look on to the levels of biodiversity, we find three levels. One is species, second is genetic diversity, third is ecosystem diversity. First of all, we should understand what do you mean by the species. Species is one of a life categorization. When the life is there, in fact, it formed with a mini microorganism, whatever we say. So one particular species, it developed a genus and all the species congregated to form a family. They ordered themselves and classified and they ended up in a phylum and they ended up in a kingdom. For example, we classify the animal kingdom as vertebrates and invertebrates based on their backbone. If you just look onto the vertebrate, you could find fishes, you could find amphibians, you could find reptiles, birds, and finally mammals. So all these things are coming under the class Mammalia, class Aves, class Reptilia, class Amphibia. So all these things are coming under a class. They order themselves and finally they have a family in the sense, for example, crows. Crows belongs to one family, Crovidae. So, and another thing, the crows, even you find two varieties of crows, dark one and other the somewhat ash in color. The ash color we call it as a common crow. So again we call it as Corvus splendens. That is the scientific name of the crow. If you just look onto the wild crow, how that is the jungle crow, which is dark black in color, it is called as Corvus macrolepidotus. So that way, the crows itself, you find different types of species, but they all have Corvus. Corvus is the genus. So a bird is different, a tree is different. This is entirely a different species. This is differently arranged. So variation within a population of a species or between two different species. Crow is one species, pigeon is one species, myna is one species, owl is another species. And if you just look on, plants are entirely a different groups of species. So that variation we are trying to understand, that variation is said to be the species diversity. Now coming to the genetic diversity, variation in the genes, you find a wide varieties and new combinations. The picture best explains to you. You find a variety of dogs, very cute puppies and other thing. The dogs belong to one genus, but you find a variety of species and the genes itself got shuffled. And in fact, there are a lot of subspecies also. The genes gets shuffled and look at their variation in the genes. Some animals, some dogs have their face covered with the hair. Some have got a short tail. Some are long growing or lengthier growing. Dalmatian, Pomeranian. In Pomeranian itself, you find varieties of dogs, German Shepherd, Labrador, or the local Indian breed Rajabalayam. So, variety of genes make them, and that shows the genetic diversity. Now, coming to the ecosystem diversity. Ecosystems we have discussed in detail on the forest ecosystem as well as your desert, aquatic, all these ecosystems we have discussed. When you just quickly recall about the ecosystem diversity, you find a variation in the ecological niches. Very particularly, you find the trophic structure to be different, the food webs to be different, and the nutrient cycling is also to be different. In the case of a marine environment, the shuffling or the free flow of nutrients are available. On the other hand, if you just look on an agricultural land, that agricultural land cycling of nutrients is different. The food web is entirely different here, and the food web in an aquatic ecosystem is different. So ultimately, the ecological niches, desert ecosystem is entirely different from an aquatic ecosystem. It is entirely opposite. On the other hand, forest ecosystem or a man-made agricultural ecosystem, it has got its own variation. Say, for example, in the case of a forest, you find a thick canopy cover. In the case of an agricultural ecosystem, you will find only short plants or the crops or other thing. So again, the levels of biodiversity also accounts a lot, and it is more related here with ecosystem diversity. Now coming to the, after understanding the different levels of biodiversity, based on this biodiversity, India had its zonation, biogeographical classification. You find different types of climate and topography in India. Say for example, in the coastal area it is more humid. Towards north you find extreme heat and cold. Towards south in the coastal areas or some parts you find coolness. Some places which are down the hills they are cool. So ultimately the climate and topography you find in India is entirely different. As a result, this has made the distribution of the plants and animals, flora and fauna in different locations, and they had different variation because of the different ecosystems available. As a result, India is very rich in biological diversity and it occupies 10th position and it is considered to be one of the plant-rich nations of the world. It is very important to study their distribution, evolution, dispersal and environmental relationship of plants and animals in the space. Another factor which is leading is the biogeography, very particularly about the phytogeography and the zoogeography. So you could find a good insight about its distribution, how they are having an environmental interaction. And every zone which is being classified in India has its own characteristic climate, soil, because soil only determines the plant distribution, topography, and as a whole it results into the total variation in the biodiversity. If you just look on to the biogeographical classification, you could find 10 zones, 10 major zones, which is being published by Wildlife Institute of India. We will again quickly recall how this biogeographical classification are made. Quickly recall those points. You could find different types of climate and topography. The variability in flora and fauna are related with the climate and topography. You find a rich heritage. Heritage means which may be exclusive to our India and it occupies 10th position and it is one of the plant-rich nations of the world. It is important to study their distribution, evolution and dispersal and their relationship. And very particularly biogeography means it includes both phytogeography and zoogeography. It gives a good insight about the distribution. So you find more amount of the camels near Rajasthan or the dry area because they could able to survive in that tough environment. And every zone has got a characteristic climate, soil and topography. Keeping all these points in mind, you find the biogeographical classification of India as 10 zones. 10 major zones have been identified. Now, if you just look on to the first biogeographic zones of India, you could find the Trans-Himalayan region, Himalayan region and the Terai region. If you just look on to the Himalayan region, first if you just look on to the Trans-Himalayas, immediately to the greater Himalayan region, very particularly of Ladakh, we find the Trans-Himalayas. The Trans-Himalayan region, they have got a sparse vegetation, very thick vegetation and has got wild sheep and goat community are more present in this area because of the availability of the grasses. And you find snow leopard and lot of migratory birds. For example, black-necked crane is it has been found in this area. The next comes the Himalayan ranges, where it includes the valleys of Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Assam, and other northeastern states. So the Himalayan range is distributed in these states or these zones. Another thing is it is having a high altitude. The unique feature or the personality of Himalayan ranges, it is having a unique personality as a high altitude, steep gradient and more flora and fauna which could be able to adapt to the harsh cold conditions. And you find oak, chestnut tree, conifers, pines and the trees are evergreen and they are tall growing. So if they are tall growing, their roots should be deeply inside the soil to take up the nutrients. Another thing is the fauna, very particularly the animals they are found as you find sheep, goats, leopard and a variety of monal. Monal belongs to a peacock family. So there are subcolors of monal you could find. They are closely associated with peacock. That is a point to be noted. And sometimes you find also pandas which move from here to China and other thing. Now come to the Terai region. Terai region is a very important area where the lower area where the rivers flow, particularly the Ganges. So that is actually a starting point for having a fertile region. Next comes the Indo-Gangetic Plain. If you just look onto the Indo-Gangetic Plain, it is one of the largest unit, largest patch. If you just look onto the satellite image, it is one of the major path, and you find a lot of rivers, and very particularly Ganges is the major river flowing in this zone. And it is again divided into three zones: upper plain of Ganga, which is found from between to Delhi to Allahabad; the middle plain of Ganga, from Allahabad to Bihar. You find the lower plain, that is towards the West Bengal. So this is how we classify, we find the Indo-Gangetic plain, and this is one of the most fertile area where the crop production is good. The length ranges from 2400 km from there, and the width is somewhere around 240 to 320 km, occupying one of a major portion of India. The heart portion, I can say, heart and the neck portion of India. So you could find a teak, sal, mahua, variety of trees. So when you find a variety of trees, the animal population also associated in a better way. Then you go to the Thar Desert, very particularly the desert zone. Thar Desert is an example. So it's a beautiful picture. You find a plain sandy area, beautifully covered, and here only the transportation is camel. So it includes Rajasthan, Ran of Kutch in Gujarat, I mean Kutch to an area, Delhi and the parts of Gujarat. Here you find a very hot and dry summer, and the winter is extremely cold. The rainfall is less than 70 centimeter. You find xerophytic plants, lot of adaptations. They have got a waxy cuticle to prevent the transpiration because of the modern rainfall. Interestingly, you find a bird called Indian bustard, and camels, wild asses, foxes, and snakes. These are more found abundantly in the desert zone of India, and the major portion falls in Rajasthan. Now coming to the semi-arid grassland region, which is the Deccan Plateau of Gujarat, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. So it extends up to the, this is a grassland region. You could find the rocky and the small grasses to be growing down. It extends up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 states have been extended with the Deccan Plateau. So this semi-arid region, two things. First thing, it is a transition zone between the desert and the dense forests. Very particularly, it has also got a link up to the Western Ghats. So you find a discontinuous vegetation cover. You find thorny shrubs, grasses are also there. So the animals which are found in the grasses are a bit small. So you find foxes, leopards, eagles, rabbits, buffaloes, which can graze in that particular region. So that is a point to be noted. Another thing is, this covers the major region. 43% of the land is covered by this semi-arid region. Another thing is, of course, 43%, if you just look on, it includes the Deccan Plateau also. Now coming to the northeastern states of India. When you just look on to the northeastern states, it includes all the northeastern regions: Nagaland, Manipur, Meghalaya, and Mizoram, Tripura. All these regions come under this northeast zone. And the interesting feature of the northeast zone is it is having the richest flora. If you say flora, you find good amount of plants. If plants are to be there, lakes or water source should be there. And this is the region you find money. You could find your Loktak Lake. Variety of lakes are found in this region, and you find 7 species of bamboos, ferns, orchids are present, and the total surface area is distributed in Assam, Manipur, as I told you, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, and Tripura, and all these are forests. The important feature of this area is you find two major animals. One is the wild buffalo, we call it as Mithun, and another interesting thing is you find rhinoceros, Indian rhinoceros, which is an endemic species found only in India, and it is now under endangered category because of the population is very less. Now coming to the Western Ghats region. If you just look on to the Western Ghats region, uh, it includes the Maharashtra, Kerala and Karnataka region. So that is a point to be noted. Another thing is, this is the major forest cover I find. Another issue is, if you just look on to the Western Ghats, it is really to be enjoyed. We are really blessed to have Western Ghats, and this is one of the hotspot diversity of India. And unless if you have a chance to visit Western Ghats, then only you will appreciate the biodiversity. It is more of an experiential thing to study about the biodiversity. So it extends from Kanyakumari in the south tip to the Tapti river in the north. So this Ghat is situated somewhere around, Ghat is a mountain region, 2700 meter above the sea. That is the first important feature. This is a rich evergreen forest. It has got somewhere around 4000 species of plants, and 80% are endemic to India. And 27% of India's rainfall is contributed by the Western Ghats. There are 15,000 species. I am just giving a simple list. And there are 1800 endemic species. Endemic species means plants and animals found in this region. And the rainfall is somewhere around 2000 millimeter. And you find these Western Ghats have been changed right from the Britishers region. They converted many of the patch of this forest area into coffee and tea gardens. Of course, it has been started by the Britishers, but still it has been continued. And you could find rubber, cardamom, cinchona, cocoa, variety of direct consumption plants are found in this region. Another interesting thing is you find a lion-tailed macaque. It is a type of monkey where the tail will be looking like a lion's tail. It will be bulged, blubbed. So this species is an endangered species found only in this region. And you find lot of Indian elephants, Elephas Asian elephant, Elephas maximus. And you could find a tiger, leopard, variety are found in this Western Ghat region. Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Islands are a quite interesting uh, environment, and initially Britishers used these islands to just keep the prisoners of the Indian freedom. Freedom fighters have been taken. Indian independent struggle, the people who struggled for Indian independence, our own Indian freedom fighters, most of them were jailed here or imprisoned in this area because it is a distance from India, and the only mode to reach during that time was only ship, and it is completely surrounded by water. So they felt that this is the ideal place so that the prisoners will not escape and they have to die in this region. This is the best exile path for the Indian freedom fighters. That was the threat given by that was the action taken by the Britishers. Point number one. Here you find two major islands. One is Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Still tribal people called Jarwas live in this area. The Andaman and Nicobar Island are located in the Bay of Bengal. Another important thing is Lakshadweep Islands. They are located in the Arabian Sea. Logically speaking, Andaman Nicobar Islands form one patch. The other patch is Lakshadweep Islands. The Andaman Nicobar Islands has got 348 small island patches or islands. It is stretching about 590 km, and the 80% of the area is under forest. It is a deciduous forest. Another thing is you find a variety of endemic species. I can say that there is one called Andaman teal. One duck is found there. Andaman swiftlet, which is being poached by many of the people and is exported to China because it has got lot of medicinal property, very particularly the Andaman swiftlet nest. There is one more bird called, which is endemic to this area, called Nicobar megapode. So you find variety of things, and hornbills are also found in this Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Finally, we look on to the coastal zones, coastal area. India is a very fantastic and a unique continent, has got three major seas. So it means that our marine production or maritime production, the production of fishes or fishing activity is more. We find the high quality pearls only in India. Of course, we cultivate them. The original pearls, high quality pearls are still taken only from Indian seas. Another thing, the fishes, the nutritious quality, the protein content, their fishes are omega rich fishes. So that is also a point to be noted. Another thing is the length, the coastal line length is somewhere around 7,500 kilometer, 7,516 kilometer. That is an important aspect. Another thing, it has got sandy beaches, forest, mangroves. The mangroves are one of an important area which is actually protecting our country from any of your floods or other thing. They act as a natural barricades. That is what an important aspect to be noted. So the west coast is narrow, extending from Gulf of Cambay to south. The west coast is 50 to 65 kilometer. The east coast is from Bay of Bengal to Eastern Ghat. It is 450 to 750 kilometer. And you find coconut trees to be well growing. And here the coastal environment is entirely different. It is humid. And the population, I mean, most of the population here is fisherman community. Unfortunately, these coastal areas are now used as dumping sites of solid waste. That is a sad part to note that, but we are trying to revive back. And comparing to other thing, Indian oceans are less polluted and provides good amount of fishes. But people have found that now because of the climate change and recent flooding and cyclones, you could find a turmoil of fishes. There are reports stating that the jellyfish which are found in the middle of the sea are far coming towards the coast. This is one of an observation found at Vishakhapatnam. So all these things have to be noted. So the biodiversity is so rich, variety and other thing. So if you just look on to the whole biodiversity, to summarize it, biodiversity includes the variety and variability of the living organisms. They are important because all our life supporting services, ecological benefits are derived only from biodiversity. The levels of biodiversity is understood as genetic. You find variety of genes, you find variety of dogs, variability in the dog species. Species itself is different. In the, for example, best example, crow is one species, banyan tree is another species. Ecosystem. Ecosystem diversity is yet another very big phenomenon which determines the distribution of flora and fauna. Another thing, based on these levels, India has got 10 biogeographic zones. Each zone has its unique feature and supports the whole continent, rather that makes up the whole continent, make India to have a large huge population and supports. And life support, not only that, it support the highest population of India, all these ecosystem services. But only thing is the pressure is gradually increasing, already it is pressurized, and if it goes on, these fragile biodiversity systems will be broken or hampered. That leads to a lot of consequences which we have to understand. That is the take home message that we are taking from this part 1 of the module 4 lecture. Thank you. Well, in the second phase of the lecture of the module 4, we are going to discuss on the India as a mega diversity nation. When India is called as a mega diversity nation, how India became a mega diversity nation is a question. What are the factors that made to be an India to be considered or to get that beautiful term of mega diversity? Mega means a large. Large biodiversity is found in our nation. How? Another thing is how you find the species to be arranged and how they are categorized. And based on their categorization, what are the endangered endemic species of India you find? And ultimately, what do you understand from the term endemism? This is what we are going to discuss in the today's discussion or today's lecture. Well, the question comes to us. India is called as a biodiversity nation, and how India became a biodiversity nation. You know that. So you find major seven continents, and India is considered to be one of a subcontinent. If you just look on to the evolution over a long period, because of the geological events in the land mass, they provided the conditions. India was slightly lower and it was there as a part of the Asian continent joined with Australia. Over a period of time, 70 million years ago, the northern and the southern continents were formed. Actually, India was towards more towards the northern continent because of the tectonic plates and other things. Very particularly, that time it was called as a Gondwana land, the eastern. I'm sorry, the northern thing. Over a period of time, together with Africa, Australia, and Antarctica, everything were joined. Over a period of time, the southern landmass of India started moving. Of course, these tectonic movements, because of the movement of the earth, the formation of the plates, tectonic plates, aggregation of the landmass. If the landmass is good, colonization of the species. So India started shifting towards the northward, towards the equator, and joined the North Eurasian continent, very particularly on the right hand side. And as a result, the India enjoyed the diversity from the other countries in the sense because of its initial formation, whatever the species that are found in North Africa, North America, Africa, and South America, Europe are all mixed in India, and also a part of the species are also mixed in Australia. And because of the shallow Tethys Sea, it got closed down because of the tectonic movements. The plants and animals which are evolved both in Europe and the far east, from the eastern region, especially from the European region, and as well as from the western side, started migrating to India because of the India's conducive arrangement. Over a period of time, Himalayas were formed. And people now find that when they made an expedition to Himalayas, interesting thing is they found marine crab shells. They were really surprised how the marine crab shells are found in Himalayas. What could be the reason? And they analyzed it, and it is somewhere about millions of years ago, and 60 to 40 million, 40 to 60 millions of years ago. And they have made the analysis with what to say, the carbon dating or whatever it might be. So this gave a hint that Himalayas were once upon a time submerged under a sea. Over a movement of the earth, tectonic plates and other thing, these geological events progressed. The Himalayas started moving towards the north of India. So India was a large, in fact, India was a large whole space. It started getting itself to be a specific part. We can say that it started to be an isolated with taking all the important species, giving a harboring all the species, giving a platform for all the plants and animals to grow. Finally, an influx from Africa, that is on the left side of India, it came towards India, and Ethiopian species that have been adapted in grasslands and semi-arid regions. Probably the wild horses which we find in India, and you can see that India was a very good trading area for wild horses and those varieties, and also cow. You find a variety of what to say, that cattle breeds in India which gave in a good amount of milk. So those wild varieties also came towards India. They migrated. As a result, the resource or the heritage became very important in India. Another thing, India has the geographical distribution between these three distinctive centers. That is with the Europe, with the Africa, America, and as well as the Australia. So as a result of the biological evolution, India was a very comfortable place for many of the animals and plants to colonize. As a result, when they colonized, the people also had a better growth and development in India. With agriculture, they could able to use the explore the marine resources. They used the rivers, and the Himalayas were there. Over a period of time, that got changed into rivers, Ganges. So enormously India underwent a beautiful repack or a rearrangement because of the evolution. And it harbored all the species, it supported all the species. So as a result, the population also started growing because it is a conducive environment. If you just look on, India was always a noted place by the travelers. Let it be Chinese travelers or the people from British, they are so amazed with the wealth of India. Our rich cultural heritage of India, you cannot match with anything in the whole world. We have got the best culture and heritage in the whole globe. So that is the reason a yogic culture, people come to our country to learn yoga, and we have got best practices. Unfortunately, it is mingling of the Western culture and other thing. Our cultural heritage got gradually diminished. We didn't understand the importance of it. And this cultural heritage was more focused with biodiversity. That is a point to be noted. So that is where you find a variety of gods in India. Let it be elephant god, we call it as what to say, that Ganapati. We worship it for the first time. It is a type of culture you find, and it is an elephant faced. So it means that elephants were respected, and anything we what to say, that the biodiversity is very much appreciated. Let it be a tulsi leaf or an elephant or whatever it might be. So the cultural heritage is also improved. As a result, it gave a very conducive platform to evolve the biodiversity. As a result, it became a rich and varied biodiversity. In many of the conservationists or biodiversity persons who study about in detail, still they are stunned with Indian biodiversity. They are still amazed how India could be able to harbor this much biodiversity. And India, we found it is one of the biodiversity hotspots. It is ranking second in the whole globe. One. Point number one. Point number two, two major Indian hotspots is one is Himalayan region, other is Western Ghats. So these two regions harbor or it provides a platform for many species. So it is very clear these factors made India to become a rich, and it is called as mega biodiversity nation. So if you just look onto the Indian ranking of biodiversity, mammals, we rank 8th, reptiles 5th, amphibians 15th. So reptiles generally are present in dry conditions. So even those dry conditioned animals could also be able to survive in India. So that way, if you just look on the ranking, let us go on to the angiosperms, the plants with the seeds. So 15th to 20th, and the number of species 14,500 species are exclusively found in India, out of which 10 are the major cash crops: rice, wheat, whatever it might be, jowar, whatever it might be, it is present only in India. That itself shows that India gives a good platform for the survival of many species and particularly for the humans. Now, if you just look onto the biodiversity, very particularly insects, insect species are the highly abundant and variety of species found in the globe. In India itself, 50,000 varieties of insects are found, of which 13,000 butterflies and moths are found exclusively only in India. So that is a quite interesting thing you could find. So the left picture shows you the butterflies, the right picture shows you a moth. So you imagine these insects, very particularly butterflies. If butterflies are found, they are all involved in distributing the pollen grains. Not only this, honeybees. So ultimately, because of the natural pollination, and the plants are growing at a higher rate. So the dispersal and the distribution of plants is carried by these butterflies and honeybees, which we have to respect them. Now, how to categorize these species? So India is very rich in species. Who is categorizing them? There is an international union for conservation of nature which finds pragmatic solutions to environmental challenges. How can you conserve the animals? That is the thing. They have got a IUCN red list of threatened species which gives a comprehensive inventory of the global conservation status of the biological species. So many biological species are there. How we can conserve them? how we can explore their importance. Based on the importance and based on the present situation, how can they be saved? How can their population be improved? Can we go for in situ or ex situ conservation? Anyhow, we are going to discuss upon. Another thing is this IUCN gives a red list. Red list in the world leading authority for the categorization of the species. For example, vulture, white-backed vulture is considered to be an endangered species. On the other hand, you find a blue rock pigeon or a pigeon, common pigeon, which is considered to be a least concerned species. So they have made the categorization as extinct. They may be extinct in the wild. They may be critically endangered. They are vulnerable due to the environmental pressures. They are threatened, near threatened. They are least concerned. No data is available. They are not at all evaluated. We think that possibly it has been extinct and it may be extinct in the wild. So that way, this is the mode they categorize. These IUCN categorize the species that are present in the globe, and because India is rich in biodiversity, this categorization is seriously applied in India. Now, we often encounter a term called endangered species. What do you mean by an endangered species? So the picture, the bird is a Indian bustard, is an endangered species. And the other thing is hawk's bill sea turtle, that is also an endangered species. What is the criteria or the guideline we are giving for endangered species? If their population size is reduced to 70%, so in the sense 100 animals are there, there are only 30 animals left behind. 70 animals are already dead. So if it is less than 30 or that 70% size, 70% decline in the size of their population over 10 years, that is the first criteria. And if the number is less than 250 mature individuals, actually mature individuals can only reproduce. So ultimately the population viability can be improved. So if the population size, very particularly the mature individuals, is less than 250, it could be considered as an endangered species. Another thing, you make a quantitative analysis showing that the probability of extinction is at least 20%. So another 20 years of time, 20% of the population will be wiped out. So this is where the trouble comes. So this is what being given as a guideline to brand or categorize a species as endangered, extinct, or whatever it might be. So for endangered, this is the category. There is something called endemic species. It is restricted to a defined geographical area. In the sense, they are found only in that particular regions. They are not found in any other way. So if they are found only in that region should be conducive and supporting them, or they cannot move to the other places because other places are not supporting them. They may die. So as a result, these biological factors, physical, climatic and biological factors, has restricted them and make them to live in a particular zone. So that could be well. The endemism in India is so strong, you find 18% of the Indian plants are endemic. On the right hand side, you could find the plant, and that plant name is Goniathalamus vianadensis. In fact, this is found in the Wayanad region of the Western Ghats. So that is being named like that. Another thing is 62% of amphibians are unique to this country. They are found only in this continent. And 153 species of lizards, 50% are endemic. You find this West Indian gecko, leopard gecko. It is having a leopard skin arrangement, so it is called as a leopard gecko. So many species are endemic because of the conducive conditions prevailing in India, and because of over a geological period, these animals have settled. These insects, marine worms, centipedes, not only that, it not only stops with amphibians or plants, the list extends. So you find a variety of insects, worms, centipedes, flies, freshwater sponges, exclusively endemic to India. Another thing, you find in the case of mammals, you find the indigenous breed. I told you, because of the Gondwana land, moving of the land towards the southern part, it gave a good distribution of the grass system. As a result, you find 27 cattle, 40 sheep, 22 goats, 8 buffaloes. This is a Kangayan breed of bull, and it has got enormous amount of power to work good in the field. And you find the water buffaloes. So Indian cattle has got the good amount of milk, in the sense nutritious milk. Of course, now innovative methods have been made to find hybrids like Jersey or whatever it might be, Jersey cattle or other. Our indigenous breeds are good in working in the field, in the agricultural field, and the milking capacity is also good, and you find a nutritious milk. That is what a point to be noted, whether it be buffalo or cattle or a cow or whatever it may be. And again, the goats and sheep. The goats and sheep fur, which is converted into leather, that fur we obtain from this Indian sheep is also so thick and strong. So that is the reason why in Kulu Manali and all you find exclusively shawl factory functioning by breeding these indigenous sheeps of India. So as a whole, if you just look on India as a mega diversity nation, how India became a mega diversity nation? It is because of the geographical arrangement. Over millions of years, India got an influx of all the species from every continent, and over a period of time, those species, both plants and animals, colonized here. And when it got separated, it had some barriers and made those species to conducively survive, and they got converted into endemic species. Many species are endangered, no doubt about it, because of the environmental pressures. So we categorize the species as endangered, threatened, extinct, and other thing. Whenever we comment a species as endangered, the population, 70% of the population size should have been declined. That is a point to be noted. And India is having a rich endemism. You find millions of species very specific to India. In the case of ranking, we stand 8th in the case of insects, reptiles, and very many animals. So that is a point to be noted. That makes us in India to be a mega diversity nation. As a result of the conducive environment, the culture, heritage, and the population growth was conducive, and it was more balanced. So India happened to be a agricultural country over a period of time. And still now the data says that 80% of India is agricultural land. Nevertheless, we have to accept the fact that deforestation, conversion of the agricultural land into apartments, concrete jungles, which are the factors which have to be noticed. So let us appreciate the biodiversity of India. That is the take home message. Thank you.